everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you guys my mid-October wrap-up. I have 10 books to talk about today. So what I think I'm going to do first is mention all of the books that I have already talked about in detail in other videos. So last week I posted a video where I reviewed 5 popular graphic novels that I read, and those were Fun Home, Bloom, The Prince and the Dressmaker, Nimona, and Through the Woods. So I'm just going to refer you to that video if you want to hear my detailed thoughts about all those graphic novels. But what I will say is that I really enjoyed all of them except for Fun Home. I ended up DNFing it. It just wasn't the book for me. And like I said, I go into that in that graphic novels video. But all the other ones I gave at least 4 stars. So that was a really fun little project to do. So I would definitely recommend looking at that video. And then another book that I have read over these past 2 weeks is Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I did a reading vlog dedicated to this book. Just to give you a little bit of a brief review, I ended up giving this 4 stars. I enjoyed it, but I do think that the first half of the book did move quite slow, and overall I'm just not the biggest fan of Nesrin, who was one of the main characters in this installment, so her POV just wasn't my favorite. But yeah, if you want to hear all of my detailed thoughts about this book, definitely go check out that reading vlog. So now that that's out of the way, I'm going to talk more in detail about books that I have not mentioned in a video yet. So I am going to work from the book that I liked the least to the book that I liked the most, and the first book I want to discuss is The Devouring Grey. This is by Christine Lynn Herman. This is the UK cover with the cool hot pink sprayed edges. So just to give you a synopsis, this is a little bit of a complicated story, but basically we center on Violet Saunders, who moves to this small town in upstate New York called Four Paths, and she quickly realizes that she has supernatural abilities, as does a lot of the other people in this town. And there's this place called the Devouring Grey, which unfortunately has murdered quite a few people in very weird ways. So this overall is very much like a mystery thriller with some horror vibes kind of thrown in. This definitely kind of reminds me of Stranger Things as well as Riverdale, although I have personally never watched Riverdale, but I have watched clips from the show, so I can definitely get those vibes from this book. I ended up listening to this on audiobook, and I definitely recommend that format. I just thought that it was like a fun, fast-paced, and enjoyable, creepy read. I think that this kind of book is perfect for the month of October. For me, the plot and the magic system was just okay. I feel like not much about it was all that original, but I do think that the characters overall are really what sells this book, so if you love more character-driven stories, I would recommend something like this. But if you're looking for something that's more original and is just going to blow you away, that's just not this book. But I did overall enjoy my experience, so I am giving this 3.5 stars. The next book I want to discuss is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This is actually my very first book of Adam Silvera's that I've ever read. I ended up listening to this on audiobook, and I really enjoyed that format. This is basically a YA contemporary with a science fiction twist to it. So in this story, we are following Mateo and Rufus, and basically at around midnight, from something called Deathcast, which is essentially the system in this society where you get a call the day you're going to die, basically telling you that you will die within the next 24 hours. They cannot tell you how you're going to die or at what exact time you are going to die, but somehow they know that in the next 24 hours you will pass away. And so then both Rufus and Mateo find each other through this Last Friend app, and they basically become each other's companion for their last 24 hours. Something also to note about this book is that one really cool aspect about it is that yes, we are following Rufus and Mateo and their 2 POVs, but we also get glimpses of a lot of other people in this city. I think this takes place in Manhattan, and we get snippets of their lives, whether they've gotten the call from Deathcast or know somebody who has or something like that. So I thought that was really cool. Overall, I was kind of flip-flopping between a 4 and a 4.5, but yeah, I don't really know what I want to rate this, but I did overall really enjoy it. I mean, parts of this book definitely wrecked my mental well-being, you know. I think Silvera does a pretty good job of getting us attached to these characters even though we are only knowing them for about 24 hours. And so I definitely found myself on the edge of my seat the entire time. Anytime like a little accident would happen, I'd be like, oh no, are they gonna die now? Who's like, what's happening? There's definitely like that chaotic energy throughout. There are definitely also some really great calmer moments throughout this book. I think the pacing is really well done, and the ending was definitely really cool and interesting. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this, and I definitely do recommend it. And after reading this, I really do want to check out more of Silvera's works. Okay, the next book I want to discuss is One Dark Throne by Kendara Blake. This is book 2 in the 3 Dark Crowns Crowns series. And I feel like I've talked about Three Dark Crowns, the first book, quite a bit on my channel recently, but basically the premise of this is that there are 3 triplets on the island of Fenburn, this fantastical island, and their names are Mirabella, Arsinoe, and Catherine, and basically each of the triplets has a different kind of magic. There's the elemental magic, there's poisoner, and then there is the naturalist. Basically, when they all reach the age of 16, they all have to compete for the throne of Fenburn, and in order to become crowned, one of them has to kill off the other 2 sisters. And overall, this book was just leaps and bounds better than the first book. I already talked about the first book, Three Dark Crowns, in one of my other wrap-ups from last month, and I enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 3 stars mainly because it was just so slow paced, and it just really bogged down what I loved about the first book, which was the characters and the atmosphere and all of that stuff. But in this installment, you know, from the pacing to the plot to the characters to everything, I was just so engaged the entire time. I also was switching between the audiobook and the physical book. The world that this series takes place in is just like so eerie and atmospheric, and I think it's just like the perfect fantasy series to read in the fall season. And I gave this 4.5 stars, and I cannot wait to read the next installment next month. And the last book I want to discuss is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This was one of the books on my TBR that I was most excited to get to. After reading the Lunar Chronicles last year and Heartless earlier this year, I just couldn't wait to get to Marissa Meyer's new work. So in this science fiction / dystopian society, we have what are called prodigies, and those are humans with super abilities. And there are 2 sides to prodigies. There's the renegades and there's the anarchists. And the renegades are basically the leaders of this government, and they are the heroes, whereas the anarchists are branded as the villains. And our 2 main characters are Nova and Adrian. Nova is an anarchist, and she has quite the bone to pick with the renegades. And then we have Adrian, who is a born and raised renegade through and through. And I did end up giving this 5 stars, but at the same time, there are a few things that I'm kind of conflicted about with this book. So this is a 550-page book, but there's not a ton that happens in this book, and you would expect for a book this long to have a lot of action and just a lot of plot, and this really didn't, which was kind of odd. It didn't really cause me to lower my rating though, just because I still think that the book is very well paced, but there's really only like 4 or 5 key scenes in this, which just isn't enough for a book of this size. My favorite parts of this book by far were the very beginning and the very end. Those scenes were absolute perfection, and I think that's really why, even though I think the plot was a little bit lacking, I did have to give this 5 stars. Also, the characters are absolutely incredible. I just love the diversity and the different powers that they have and how they get their powers. There's just so many good things going on in this book. There's definitely aspects of this book that remind me of Vicious and Vengeful by V.E. Schwab, because kind of the way that the people in the society get their powers, but also the way that there's kind of morally gray characters on both sides of the good and evil spectrum. You know, it was really cool to see some of the renegades, which are the heroes, as kind of not great people, but then some of the anarchists are really great people. So it's kind of good to see those stereotypes of good and evil being challenged. But yeah, between the very beginning, the very end, and just the characters overall, that is really what sold this book for me and why I just couldn't give it less than 5 stars. I'm definitely looking forward to Arch Enemies, and then Supernova is coming out next month, so I'm just so excited to continue with this series. And that is going to be it for my mid-October wrap-up, you guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you would consider subscribing. Don't forget to push that notification bell button below so that you will be notified every time I upload, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!